Welcome to this week's class in Chassidus. We're going to be learning this week a beautiful Chassidic discourse from the Rebbe. The name of the Chassidic discourse is called Ra'ici, Vehine, Menorazov. The Rebbe said this Chassidic discourse on Shabbos Parshas Baha'alotcha, which was the 11th day in the month of Sion, in the year Tafshin Mem Aleph, 43 years ago. So again, the Chassidic discourse is based on the verse from the prophets in the Haftorah for Shabbos Parshas Baha'alotcha, where the prophet says, Ra'ici v'hine menorazov kula. I see, and there is a beautiful, big, complete candelabra made out of gold. V'shivan ereseh, there are 7 candlesticks to it. V'shnayim zeisim aleh, and there's 2 olive trees around it. So the Rebbe says it's brought down in the Medrash, which the Alter Rebbe in Likutei Torah, which is the Chassidic discourse of the Alter Rebbe on the Parsha, on this week's Torah portion, and he says as follows. There were 3 prophets. Jeremiah comes along and says, Kesaf nimas kar lehem. He calls the Jewish people silver. The prophet Ezekiel calls them sigim, shards, leftover pieces, scrap metal. But so Zechariah comes along, and not like Jeremiah, not like Yecheskel, and Zechariah says, I see a candelabra made out of gold, it's all totally gold. So in other words, what the author is saying, that the prophet Zechariah is saying that the Jewish people are like gold, is in contrast to the other 2 prophets, Jeremiah and Yecheskel, that didn't necessarily speak so highly of the Jewish people. And the author Rebbe explains in the Likutei Torah that from this Medrash comes out that the prophet Zechariah it says that the Jewish people are like gold is referring to the time now, not like the way they want to explain it's referring to the future when Mashiach comes. In other words, because since Zechariah is saying it in relation to what Jeremiah and Yecheskel, so to speak, downgraded the Jewish people, so obviously it's talking about their time. They spoke about the downgrade, and comes along Zechariah says, no, the Jewish people are very, very special and very, very holy. So we have to understand, how is it possible that Jeremiah and Yecheskel, that prophesied, when did they prophesize? In the times of the temple. And they called the Jewish people silver and scrap metal, etc. And Zechariah, which is in time of exile, should say, oh, the Jewish people like gold. I mean, the times of the temple is the times of the temple. And especially, the Rebbe said it's based on what it's known, that when there's 2 different opinions, both are correct. In Hebrew, it's called Elu be'elu divrei Elokim chayim. In other words, even according to the insight, that the prophet Zechariah is talking about the future. So that's correct also. He's also talking about the future. And that's, as a matter of fact, according to Jewish law, that's what he's talking about. In other words, when Mashiach comes, the candelabra is going to be made out of gold, means it's going to be totally complete. So obviously, it's self-understood, this idea where it's total complete gold is referring to also, when Zechariah says specifically that just like in the future when Mashiach comes, it's going to be total gold. Exile is going to be on the same level. So Rebbe explains, and he says like this: to want to understand this, we have to have an introduction. What's this mean? That the Jewish people are like a golden candelabra. What does that mean? That we're made out of totally gold. And like the Parsha says, that when you made the menorah, it says that this is the way you made the menorah. It was mikshazav, it was made out of one big block of gold. Ad yirecha till its base, ad pircha till its flowers. It's one big block of gold. In other words, all made out of one big block of gold. So the Alter explains in the Likutei Torah, when it says yirecha, which is referring to the base, it's referring to the lower levels. Like he brings from the verse in the prophets where it says that the thighs are like jewels, referring to the lower part of the body. And then the prachim is referring to the higher levels, like it says Yatzis Perach Yisrael. So even though you have the lower levels and you have the higher levels, but it's all coming from one place. What does that mean it's coming from one place? If there's higher and there's lower, how can it be one place? So what does that mean practically? It's referring to the idea of Avos Yisrael, because if you love everybody, you don't say this one's better and this one's worse, and this is elitist, and this one's simple. There's no such thing. It's all miksha achas, it's all one. We love everybody equally. And here is the revolutionary idea. Not besides the fact that you have the lower part and you have the higher part, which we call Yerecha and Pircha, but practically speaking, the foot and the head. But never, and each one has a quality over the other one. As we know, there's the quality of the head, it can think. On the other hand, the quality of the feet, it just does what it has to do. But nevertheless, even though each one has its unique quality, Yerecha and Pircha, the head and the feet, but it's all one. All one. And that's the real power of Ahavas Yisrael. And like the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya at length, in chapter the 32, Perek Lamed Beis, besides the fact that who knows, in reference to Hashem, the value of the Jewish people. In other words, that everyone has a beautiful soul, and because we all have we have a beautiful soul, and we all have one Father, so therefore we're part of one piece. So therefore, we're literally one. It's not like this one's this person, that's that person. We're all part of the same soul. We all have one Father, so therefore we're all one. So if we're all one, then we can have true Ahavas Yisrael, love one for the other. So that's the first lesson of Miksha Achas, that we're all one, even though there's higher and there's lower, etc. But in reality, it's all one, and that's the key to having Ahavas Yisrael getting along one with the other. Now that's conceptually. But as we know that the main thing is the action. So therefore, it's self-understood when it comes to the candelabra, which is connecting to the idea of the Jewish people. The main thing is action. What does it mean, action? That the candelabra should give off light. And how does the candelabra give off light? That happens through the 7 different candles. What does that mean? So that explains, based on what the Alter Rebbe says in the Torah in the beginning of the Torah portion, that the 7 candles is referring to the 7 different types of the Jewish people. Because as we know, the ultimate goal is, why did Hashem create us? Hashem created us that we should serve Hashem. And like it says clearly, Ani loy nivresi, the only reason why I was created was to serve Hashem. And what does that mean practically? That there's different levels. That means, what does it mean there's different levels? I thought we're all one because there's different emotions. Every one of our emotions have to serve Hashem. And like it's explained elsewhere, and references specifically which explained at length in a Chassidic discourse, which is called Al Tatzer Azmoyav, from the Mittler Rebbe, the second Chabad Rebbe, and he explains that the main spiritual work today is transforming our emotions. However, when it comes to transforming our intellect, that's going to happen ultimately when Mashiach comes. And that's the resemblance of the seven branches in the Menourah, which is referring to the 7 different ways of serving Hashem, which means in every one of our emotions. And corresponding to those emotions, you have 7 different types of Jewish people. One is more chesed, one is more gvura, one is more tiferes, etc., which corresponds to the 7 midos. Okay, so what did we learn so far? Miksha achas means that we're all one, we love each other. The 7 branches is that yes, that we all have different emotions. Each one, we all have 7 emotions, but then again, everyone has their emotion that's their thing, and everyone serves Hashem and transforms himself through the emotions. However, when it comes to the intellect, that will happen more when Mashiach comes. Now, the fact is, we're doing this tremendous work, trying to love everybody and transform our emotions. So everything that we do here, we need to have help from Hashem. Like it says clearly, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ezroi, we need Hashem to help us. And that's what he explains in L'Kutei Torah. In this Chassidic discourse in the beginning, that the 7 candles is referring to the 7 shepherds, the 7 faithful shepherds. What's the idea of a shepherd? That he feeds and he pastures everyone what they need, because if we have to go ahead and be unified and we have to go ahead and transform our emotions, we need to have help. So the 7 shepherds, the 7 leaders inspire us and help us serving Hashem. And the same thing also is understood with the 7 leaders of the Jewish people, which we know the Jewish people are called like in the prophets are called like sheep, like what says that they give help and assistance to the souls of the Jewish people. And this idea also takes place in the time of exile. And like it's explained, like it's explained in the Chassidic discourse in Tanya, in reference to Moshe Rabbeinu, that we know that who is the first of the shepherds, who is the first one to take care of the Jewish people, is Moses. And in reference to Moses, what does it say? That Moshe Rabbeinu, he had all for Hashem. So this question is asked, Moshe Rabbeinu had all for Hashem. They wanted the Jewish people to have all for Hashem, but what is explained? For Moshe Rabbeinu, it's easy to have all for Hashem, but because it's easy for Moshe Rabbeinu to have all for Hashem, therefore it's easy for every single Jewish person to have all for Hashem, because Moshe Rabbeinu gives us that quality to be able to have all for Hashem, even in the darkness and the double darkness of exile. And obviously, if Moshe Rabbeinu gives us everything we need to have all for Hashem, the same applies to all the other shepherds that took care of the Jewish people, that they help us in the time of exile serving Hashem. Okay, now, so what do we have so far? That the idea is what? Miksha achas, it's one piece that we love everybody. The 7 candelabras are referring to the 7 emotions that we have to transform ourselves, as well as the 7 shepherds that help us connecting us to Hashem. And that's why the Jewish people are called candles. Why? Because we know the famous verse that says, Neir Hashem, the candle of Hashem is the soul of God. What does that mean practically? Rebbe says, like the author explains in Likutei Torah, in this portion, and at length in the Chassidic discourses by Chanukah, which talks about candles, in Torah Oyer, and also in Shari Oyer, and Torah, and other Chassidic discourses afterwards. So he explains what's the whole idea of a candle. He says that a candle there's 3 components to a candle. One component is the vessel. Every candle, you need a vessel. Then in the vessel, you have oil, and then you have a wick. So there's 3 things. There's the vessel, the oil, and the wick. And that's why the Jewish people are called candles. Why is that? Because what's the first thing? We said the vessel. What is a vessel? A vessel is something that receives. It receives the oil and the wick. And the Jewish people were like a vessel. We're a keli to receive all the blessings. What is the oil and what is the wick? That is referring to learning Torah and doing mitzvahs, which is also called a candle. Like it says clearly, Ner mitzvah, the candles are mitzvah, and Torah is her. And when the Jewish people fulfill the Torah mitzvahs, learn Torah and do mitzvahs, so by learning Torah and doing mitzvahs, we become candles to light up the whole world. And like it says clearly, in reference to the candelabra in the temple, that from the temple, the light would go out to the whole world. As we know, the windows in the temple are very, very unique. It's called shkufim atumin, which means it was narrow on the inside and wide on the outside. Means that the light from the temple wasn't about the windows weren't to bring the light in, it was about bringing the light out. So what the Rebbe explains just now here is, before we go further, is that the Jewish people are called candles because the candles are made up of 3 parts. One is we receive, and then we learn Torah and do mitzvahs. And then what do we do with that? We go ahead and share that light of Torah mitzvahs with the whole world. Now, when we go ahead and do our spiritual service of working on our middays, learning Torah and doing mitzvahs and transforming the world, so the Rebbe says every work has to come by, there's a change. There has to be a change in the person doing the work. And that's why it's called avodah. Like the analogy Chassidus gives, what's avodah mean? To working out a hide. You take a coarse piece of hide and you make it soft. And like the author explains at length in Torah and Parshas Mishpatim. So that's why it says afterwards that there were 2 olive trees. What's the idea of 2 olive trees? Because an olive in general is bitter. And when a person basically is bitter, what does that mean spiritually? Bitterness causes somebody to make change. And as before you serve Hashem, praying, studying, doing mitzvahs as an introduction, mirirus, bitterness in the beginning, will cause the person to change. And specifically, you have one on the right side and one on the left side. What does that mean? So he explains what it's brought down in Chazal. It says that before a person goes to pray, you don't just walk in, okay, I'm praying to God. Whoa! Before you pray, you have kovid reish. You're humble a little bit. You have a little mirirus. You have a little humility. And as before a person goes to pray, you have to have a little bitterness, which means humility. And like it says clearly, "V'nafshi ka'afar lakol tia." You want your soul to be like the earth. And then after you have the humility first, the merirus, which is represented by the olive, then you ask Hashem, "Sak libi b'sarasecha," my heart should be open to learning Torah. And he brings another chazal that says that a person, when he learns, it has to be that your mouth is dripping, which is again the idea of bitterness. And that's when it comes to learning Torah. The same thing also when it comes to doing mitzvahs. Because mitzvahs you do after you learn Torah. And like it says, Gadol Talmud Shemevil Demaisa. What's the whole purpose of learning? You have to learn to connect to Hashem, to know what to do, but then you have to go do the mitzvahs. So mitzvahs is also done with the introduction of acceptance, with bittul. In other words, when a person does a mitzvah, think of it, when you do a mitzvah, what do you mean you're doing a mitzvah? You're doing what Hashem wants you to do. So by default, anytime you're doing a mitzvah, you're being batul. You're accepting what Hashem wants. Up to the point that you not only are accepting to do what Hashem wants and you have some kind of vested interest, but you're doing, like the powerful expression is, Asay ritzoynoi kirtzoyncha. Means you're doing whatever the will of Hashem is. Whatever Hashem wants, I'm ready to do it. And that becomes my will. And up to the point when you do a mitzvah, you do it in action. And like action, an action is also an idea of someone like forcing himself to do it. And it's like when it comes to certain mitzvahs, you force yourself to do it. What it means forcing yourself? That's the idea spiritually, which is called the skafia. You're breaking yourself. So you see again, back to the point. What we're explaining is the idea of the olive tree. That the olive is all about bitterness, and through the bitterness, that's the introduction of praying, of learning Torah and doing mitzvahs, and then the Torah and the mitzvahs and the prayer are off the charts. Now, even though the olive is bitter, but what comes out from the olive? What comes out from the olive is oil. And that's called Kabbalistically, Hishapcha Chashreichel and Hoira. You're transforming something that's bitter into something which is oil. You're taking darkness and turning into light. Because on one hand, we know that an olive, when a person, it says in the Mishnah, in the Talmud, when a person eats olives, you can literally forget what you're learning, up to 70 years. And also we know that the olive itself, how do you take the oil out? You have to crush the olive. In other words, by crushing, what's crushing? It's not a good thing, it's darkness. But what happens when you crush it? You bring out the oil that gives off light. And like the tremendous light that comes specifically from the darkness. And that's why, because again, olive itself is bitter, but from the olive comes the oil, and that's why specifically, in the time of exile, the Jewish people are called what? Menoirazav. The question in the beginning of Chassidic discourse we asked, what do you mean? In the times of the temple, we called the silver. In Galus, wow, we're gold. Yes, and never said exactly. In the time of Galus, in the greatest darkness, that's when we can be called gold. Why? Because specifically in exile, and specifically through being crushed, and through the challenges of the exile, what happens, what gets revealed, that we're really a candelabra of gold. And just like the oil that comes out from the olive by crushing it, and that's why, that specifically in times of Galus, we have the revelation of Pnimius Torah, Chassidus, Kabbalah, only in Galus, which as we know is the oil of the Torah, or like it's called the secrets of Torah and the secrets of the secrets. Up to the point where it says we have all the talks and the Chassidic discourses of the previous Rebbe, which is all the gift of Galus. When did we get that? Specifically in exile. And you can say this is also, so to speak, hinted to what we learned in it's a beautiful line Rebbe says over here. What we learned in Masechta Shabbos, that it says that on Shabbos you can't sit next to a candle to read from the candle. Why? Because we're concerned you might mess with the candle. But what happens during the week? During the week, could you sit with a book and read next to candles? No problem whatsoever. So that's a simple halacha. But Rebbe explaining spiritually, says beautifully. What does that mean? Specifically in the time of exile, the reading and learning Torah, where can you read it? You can read it by what? Next to a candle, which is made out of the oil, which gives off light from the oil that's in there. So in Shabbat, it's such a holy day, you can go ahead and use any benefit from the oil. But on the contrary, specifically in Galus, during the week, we have the power to go ahead and learn from the light that comes from the oil, which came from the olive. This now there explains, that's why the prophet says, Ve'isi, and I see there's a candelabra full of gold, and I see what? 7 candles on it. Which one is it referring to? It's referring, yes, to the time of exile. And it's also referring to the time when Mashiach comes. Why is that? Has it both? Because when a person goes ahead in the time of exile, and the time when he's being crushed, and nevertheless you have you get along, you have Avos Yisrael, and then you work on transforming your emotions. So by doing the avodah in Galus, we merit for the great revelation. What's going to be Mashiach comes, we're going to have the complete candelabra made out of gold on the highest level. So by doing our avodah now, we are preparing for what? For Mashiach comes. Rabbi explains that what does the idea mean? That the revelation that takes place in the time of Galus is it's called a candle. Ner, it's a candle. But what happens when Mashiach comes? It says, Hashem himself is going to be the light for the world. And it's explained in other places in Chassidus, the difference between a candle and a light. A candle gives off light. And what's the difference between a candle and a light? So in Galus, it's called a candle. And in Mashiach comes, it's called a light. What's the difference? Because a candle has a finite capacity. As long as you have the candle and it goes out. But light, which comes from the sun, that's always there. And that's the tremendous revelation that's going to be like when Mashiach comes. And in reference to the revelation of Mashiach comes, it says Hashem is going to take the sun out of its protection, and actually the righteous people are going to be healed from it. In other words, we're going to have the revelation of the name of Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is referring to the sun, and it's going to come out from the concealment of Shem Elokim, which we know that Yud Kei Vav Kei is the part that gives off the infinite light, and then Elokim is what minimizes it, just like the sun and the moon. So Mashiach comes, we're going to have the infinite light itself. Now, however, we know, so that's all we're going to have when Mashiach comes. The Rebbe says we know that on Erev Shabbat, you can start tasting the dishes for Shabbat. So what does that mean? That in the time of Galus, we already have the ability to experience the revelation of Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is practically the attribute of compassion, and all the concealments totally go away, concealments of the name Elokim, up to the point that we can fulfill the verse that says Vayikra in Torah, it says Vayikra Hashem, Hashem's name twice. That so when it speaks of Hashem, Prime, so it says Hashem. There's a line, and then it says Hashem again. So what's the difference between the first one and the second one? So the first one is called Shem Avayid Leila, the very, very powerful name of Yud Kei Vav Kei. Before you have the line, and then you have the line, and then you have the second one. So the first one goes into the second one, and the most powerful Yud Kei Vav Kei comes into the lowest levels, and even comes into the places which are contrary to godliness. And like the verse continues on to say, when it speaks of Hashem, it says, "V'salachta, God will forgive us. V'nechaltenu, we're going to inherit the land that we receive the everlasting inheritance, which is basically the land of Israel complete." Up to the point where Hashem is going to expand the boundaries, and we're going to have all the 10 nations we're going to conquer, and that's going to come spiritually by transforming our intellect. And how do we do that? We can already do it now by learning Chassidus, like we're learning right now, in a way that we totally comprehend it, which we comprehend it, we understand it, and when we go ahead and spread the teachings of Chassidus outside all over the world, like we're doing internet all over the world learning Chassidus, what will happen is Mashiach will come, and it's going to and he's going to come b'mheira v'yameinu mamash very, very soon and very, very quickly. So here you have another very powerful, beautiful Chassidic discourse of the Rebbe, and Rebbe's showing us how basically the avodah now in Galus, the avodah in exile with all the challenges, that will specifically from the challenges, that will make us shine now, and also make us shine in the future, and that will prepare the world. And as Rebbe says, like right now we have the ability to already taste. So it's going to be like Mashiach comes, the greatest blessings by learning Chassidus and transforming our intellect, and we will merit that. God willing, we'll have, the Rebbe says, Mashiach will come, and next class will be in Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh. Have a great and blessed week. Shavua Tov.